welcome to Incoming, the vidcast from Meeples and Miniatures that takes a look back at the week's historical miniature releases. This is episode number 15, which takes a look back at the miniature releases for week ending August 14th, 2009. And as always, I'm your host, Neil Shuck. And God, I'd just like to say a huge welcome to everybody who's viewing this vidcast for the first time through the iTunes feed of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. Hello and a very warm welcome to the show. I hope you enjoy it. We have another top 10 releases for you this week. It's been a pretty busy week, as you'd imagine, leading up to Gen Con, so lots to get through. At number 10 we have the first of a couple of new releases this week from Warlord Games. And I must admit, I had to go through and look twice because I thought English Civil War Mortar, I'm sure I've reviewed one of these recently. And indeed I have. Renegade released one of these a few weeks ago. And here now we have Warlord's version. A pretty solid piece. Looks okay. Figures well sculpted. But it's one of these, you'll need one of these for your army sort of pieces as opposed to that's really exciting, must have. So a solid, if somewhat unexciting release from Warlord. At number 9, we have a set of late war Americans released from Battlefield Miniatures. The fact that these figures have fairly decent proportions will give away the fact they're actually 20mm. And here we have a pretty solid release. 3 packs of infantry armed with M1s, a few with carbines, and a group of officers. Fairly typical World War II infantry poses. A good looking release from Battlefield. At number 8, we have some releases into the Carthaginian army for Crusader miniatures. This particular picture is of their Carthaginian citizen militia. They've also released a couple of extra packs, including Carthaginian heavy infantry. Unfortunately, they haven't got pictures of those on their site at the moment. Again, these look pretty well sculpted, well proportioned. Maybe a little uniform, although, to be honest, a lot of wargamers like their ranked figures to be of a pretty uniform sort of look. So again, decent, but not particularly exciting. I want to say that you'll see from later on the sort of differences with another Ancients release this week. Number 7, we have the first of several new releases this week from Het. Now, Het are probably one of the most well-known makers of plastic figures, primarily in 1/72 or 20mm scale, and they've just announced their releases in their E14 range, I think it is, which is for August of this year. A mixed bag of releases, to be honest. I've picked out what I think are the best 2 or 3, and they feature at certain points in this podcast. They have released several packs of Colonial artillery this time round. This, I think, is the best, which shows Colonial field artillery piece. They've also released a Gatling gun and a Gardner gun. I think always interesting to see what Het are doing. And continuing with our Het theme, at number 6, we have the first of a few releases you'll be pleased to see if you play French. These are a couple of packs of French voltigeurs and carabiners that have been released in 1/72 scale by Het. Figures are released in a mix of firing line and march attack pose. And the thing I like especially about this picture is that so many people complain about using especially 20mm plastics. They don't look as good as metals. I think this picture shows give them a decent paint job, and they do. So again, Het showing that they are a viable alternative for figures if you're looking to game Napoleonics in 20mm. But remember these poses, you may be seeing them again very soon. Back to Ancients at number 5, and it's back to Warlord. And this is a brand new release of a couple of character figures that have been promised for a while. When Warlord actually got the license to produce Macro and Cato from the Simon Scarrow books, it was much talked about. Now we finally get to see the finished miniatures here, sculpted by Paul Hicks, and I have to say I'm a bit disappointed. I really do like the stuff that Paul Hicks has done, especially in his bolt action ranges. These are pretty typical chunky looking 28mm character figures. Now he's done 2 sets, helmeted and unhelmeted, and I think the helmeted figures do look a lot better. But I mean the facial expression, especially on the standard bearer on the unhelmeted version, just isn't flattering at all. So whilst they're pretty different from Warlord's other Roman command figures, I can't say that they're any better, and I think overall I prefer their standard command figures to these. Number 4, it's back to French plastics, it's back to Het, and it's back to voltigeurs and carabiners. Remember these poses? Probably saw an awful lot of them a few seconds ago in their 20mm range. However, these are 28mm figures, and I think this is a pretty significant release from Het. It has to be said their 28mm Al-Cid range was, and to be honest still is, not the most impressive set of figures in the world. These, however, are a different kettle of fish, and I think it shows that they've been keeping an eye on what's going on in the current plastic wargames market. We've seen French infantry releases from both the Perrys and Victrix, but we haven't seen light infantry. We haven't seen Voltigeurs or Carabiners released yet. And here we have them, 2 packs from Het. Now, their standard Het sculpting, which means it's realistic proportions, realistic scales. It will be interesting to see how these match up side by side next to Perrys or Victrix. But considering you get a box of 48 of these for around about £11-12, and they're hard plastic, I think if you're collecting either Victrix or Perry, Napoleonic French, these are a release you need to take note of. They're going to be doing Bavarians and Prussians in the near future. They've done good releases of both of those in 1/32 scale, so the tooling's in place, they just need to scale down the figures. And I think this is going to be another alternative for all of you who are doing 28mm Napoleonics. I think this is probably one of the most exciting releases I've seen for a few weeks. No, not my number one because I have favourite figures this week, but I think this is a release that you need to take note of. Okay, to number 3, and yet more French Napoleonics. Our old friends Campaign Game Miniatures have just got a new release of Old Guard in greatcoats and up to their usual high standard. We've seen a lot of releases from these guys in the last couple of months, and they continue to be of a good standard, well sculpted, well detailed, a full range of interesting poses. Great stuff again from CGM. To number 2, and it made me smile when this picture came up on TMP earlier this week. One of the posts said, "Oh, that's a nice looking vehicle, I bet it will feature highly on Incoming this week." And yes, it does. Latest release from HLB ESCO in their 1/48th vehicle range. This is a BMP-1, and despite the fact that Richard's shown this particular shot kind of in the raw, if you like, I think you'll agree this is just a fantastic looking vehicle. HLBS's Russian vehicle range is just getting better and better. Obviously, the BMP-1 is one of the workhorses of the Russian army, and this just looks great, doesn't it? 1/48 scale, £25. Of course, it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but just look at it. It's beautiful, isn't it? Really, really nice. So, on to the number 1. And this week, we're back to sculptor we featured a couple of times on the show. This is Steve Seller. This is a new release for Gorgon Studios, back to their ancient Greek range, and these are early Etruscans. And I think this is a bit of a return to form for Steve. We featured his work on the Wargames Factory figures last week, and I was a little bit disappointed. These, I think, are so much better. And again, compare these figures to the Carthaginian infantry I was talking about earlier. Okay, with a couple of these poses, they're going to be a bit of a pain to rank up, but the poses are just so much more fluid and dynamic, and the detailing looks much more clean and precise. And for me, this release this week, are the ones that really stood out from any other. And again, even comparing these back to the Warlord Romans, I think the proportion difference isn't pronounced, but it's enough to be noticeable. And with the exception of the BMP-1, I think this release is number 1 by quite some way this week. Great stuff from Gorgon Studios. I'm excited to see some more of their Ancients releases. So there we have it, another week's releases. Bit more of a mixed bag this week, I think, but hopefully something in there that you'll find interesting and hopefully even a little exciting. But as always, please feel free to give me your feedback. I look forward to hearing your views. Now, this will be the last Incoming you'll see for a couple of weeks as I'm going away on holiday, so I probably won't be producing another show until the first week in September. So I'll have a couple of weeks worth of releases to catch up with then. I'm sure I'll have an interesting show for you. Thank you very much for watching. Take care until next time. Happy gaming. Speak to you soon. Bye.